Hey everyone, welcome to the MMA Heat podcast. I'm Karyn Bryant.
What's up, everyone? Alan Jouban here as well.
So I am back from Russia. I was in Moscow, which I'll tell you all about and everything. We're doing this a day late because it was Veterans Day and we were
Yeah.
relaxing. Do want to say thank you to the men and women who've served our country. You know, my dad was in the Air
Thank you.
Force and my father-in-law was in the Army. You had family that served
Oh,
as
very
well,
nice.
right?
Yeah. My let's see, my grandfather on my dad's side was in World War II. My grandfather on my mom's side was in the Vietnam War.
Wow.
No, Korean War.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
So, yeah, Korean War. Korean War. My mom walked by. Korean War. Yeah. So, my grandparents served as well.
Nice. Well, we thank all the men and women who have served and look out to protect us. But Alan, you know, you're kind of laid up right now. People can't tell, but you look normal from the waist up here. But what's going on?
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. You can't see. I have my leg propped up right now. As I kind of told you guys on the last episode, on the last podcast. Unfortunately, I was trying to get a fight, and in training, I tore my ACL. And ACL, if you're not familiar with it, it's a shitty one. I've done it before. I did it when I was 17, senior year in high school. It's painful. It's a long recovery, but I've done it, and I've been through my injuries, and so it's a bump in the road. I'm staying really positive, got a really positive mindset, trying to get better at everything else during the process. But yeah, I had surgery on Friday of last week, so I'm only like 4 days out. And my goal is, I don't really know, I don't have a goal set, but my goal is to just recover faster than anyone has ever recovered before because I'm bored, and that's what I like to do. I like to be
Right.
competitive. So I had a great doctor. He got me some great machines to get my leg moving right away, and I've been using those and icing it quite a bit. And I'm eager to start physical therapy and just rock and roll through this. But with that said, with an ACL, your soonest day of coming back to compete again is about 6 months. So I've got 6 months before I get thinking about the octagon. In the meanwhile, I'll just focus on getting better at every other aspect that I'm able to in life, and stay positive. So sorry to the fans that were kind of waiting. I know I alluded to making a fight announcement soon
Yeah.
because I was in talks with Sean Shelby about a fight, and this just came out of nowhere. It's one of those things I can't really control, but I apologize for it to my supporters. But we'll be ready to rock and roll in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, you heal very quickly. Usually, you're like Wolverine.
Yeah.
And so, why don't you call your boy Tony Ferguson? Ask him how he
Right?
did it. I mean, I know it was, you know, he this man knows how to heal up pretty quickly, too.
Yeah. I think he's probably going to tell me to like do some gardening or some yoga, something
Right.
like that. It might speed up the process.
Definitely. Well, obviously, we hope you heal up fast. And whatever you do, do not take a page out of Michael Bisping's playbook. Do not do the
No.
crane kick.
I don't even know how he did that. I mean, I thought about it when I got out. I was like, he did some crazy stuff. I kind of want to be competitive, but
Right.
no. I had the ACL meniscus. He had a knee
Yeah,
reconstruction,
it's
a
insane.
knee replacement. Basically, they put a robotic knee in him,
Yeah.
and he was bouncing around on one leg. And even in his Instagram stories, Karen, if you've seen, he's kind of like sparring with his son.
Right.
I'm nowhere near that. I'm nowhere near that. I'm in bed about 22 hours a day at this point. So I'm just trying to get the swelling and the pain to go away.
Oof.
Then I can kind of act a fool. So Michael's a special breed.
Yeah, he definitely is. Well, I was in Moscow for the past few days or whatever, which was really really cool. I shared some pictures, and we can maybe put some in here in the podcast. It was really neat to be able to see the iconic St. Basil's Cathedral in person. You know, that's
Yeah.
the building with that's the church with all the crazy shapes, and it
Yeah.
really is spectacular. I will say I basically the only sort of sightseeing I did was go to Red Square, and I got there on Thursday. When I got there, I wasn't feeling great, kind of wiped out. So I just, hit the hotel on Thursday night. But Friday, before the show, I went and took a walk. I was like, oh, it's not that, I was just going to go take a walk. And I was kind of heading in that direction, but at first then I thought it seemed a little further. And then I sort of turned and you're like, oh, and when you see, like, it literally takes your breath away. You're like, oh my God, there it is, And so as you're walking toward it, it's just this amazing looking thing. And so I walked to Red Square and I was just there for a little bit because I had to go back and get ready for the show. I had more time on Saturday. I went over there with Heidi Dean. Of course, everybody knows Heidi, all the fighters.
Yeah.
She's the one who
Love her.
takes care of all you guys. So we had actually gone back there on Friday night too after we did the show. Rashad and I and Heidi went over there because I wanted to see it at night. It looks amazing, all
Yeah.
lit up and everything. And then he had a friend that lives there, some old like wrestling coach guy or whatever. So he was kind of showing us around Red Square and telling us more about the history of the different things. So it was kind of cool to hear a little bit more about the buildings. A lot of them now are just museums, but he was explaining, some of the things. But, that is the Kremlin right there. That is where Putin works right there, So it is kind of crazy to see all that stuff firsthand. And Heidi, and she had another friend too, Michelle from Perfecting Athletes, and she was talking about like, now that you're there, you want to go home and watch movies that were shot there, right? So I guess Michelle had just been watching The Saint, or Heidi was with Val Kilmer. You know what I mean? We're talking about like Gorky Park, other things that are based in Russia now. I definitely want to see from having been there firsthand. But Lenin's tomb is there, and all this stuff. It really was neat. Just to be able to walk around and see that. I didn't really get to explore too much more of Moscow, unfortunately, but it was cool. And really a neat thing to be able to have seen. So, like, the fact that I got to go to Russia twice this year was pretty cool.
I know, it's kind of crazy, right? Like, I remember UFC touching down in Russia the first time was such a big deal, kind of. And now you've already been twice this year, and it seems like we're going to continue going more and more.
Yeah, I think we will, because that was the second time in Moscow, third time in Russia overall. We were in St. Petersburg earlier this year. And I guess this time we were in the CSKA arena, which was nicer than the place they went for the first show. So everybody was happy. This was like a more modern stadium and arena and everything, and it was better. I guess the one they were in before was the old one, and it literally had like a rat problem or something, and so then it also had a cat problem because they brought cats in to kill the rats or something crazy. Yeah. So I was glad I wasn't in the rat infested one. But it was kind of funny because, it's a big deal when you're over there. So there were some, let's say, political figures that showed up. That was kind of nerve-wracking. The security team has to accommodate, and there are certain kinds of people in certain countries that, right this way, sir, that, you know what I mean, are, let's just say, intense political figures, if people are kind of reading between the lines here. And so that was interesting to be able to look down and see that, from our table. And I know that added some extra pressure to the local fighters that like are there, and I turn around and there's this leader right there. They don't want to mess up in front of him, which is why partly I think Khabib's cousin Abubakar was so upset. It was his UFC debut. He wanted to impress him. He's sitting right there. So I know he was really heartbroken over that loss. Also, but Steven Seagal was there too, which was totally random.
Yeah. See, I don't even know what nationality Steven is anymore. Like, he was spending time in Louisiana as a sheriff. He's like a cop in some part of Louisiana when he had that cop show. Hangs out in Hollywood often, obviously, but then he also travels around the world. He's kind of still living that man of mystery style, Steven Seagal.
Totally. That was very random, very random. But I will say, fun times seeing shows in Russia. Obviously, Zabit, Magomedsharipov, the main event against Calvin Kattar. And for those who, I'm sure people figured it out by now, the reason it was 3 rounds is because originally that was the co-main event. When Junior Dos Santos had to drop out of the fight with Volkov, it got elevated to main event, but that was only, a couple weeks ago, 22 days ago, basically, or whatever. Yeah. And so, or, before the fight. So, apparently Calvin's team, I think, wanted 5, but Zabit's team was like, no, we'll take 3. And apparently they didn't even ask Zabit, is the story. The team made the decision. Seems like it was a right decision for Zabit.
Absolutely. I really can't recall how well Zabit looks going into the deeper rounds. Well, not the deeper rounds, but in the 3rd round for the majority of his fights in UFC thus far. He keeps a pretty good pace. He's got a lot of movement. He throws a lot of fancy stuff. So normally that kind of thing does tire someone down. But he's also a lighter guy. He's not like a guy carrying around a tremendous amount of muscle. And he's not also really like a fast twitch muscle fiber type guy, lean guy. So he seems like he could go the long haul if needed. He's, kind of like a more athletic built Diaz brother. He's got that kind of Diaz build, but with a lot more athleticism. But you can see it in his fight. I think it was definitely the right call, his corner or him turning down the 5-round fight. He looked tremendous in the first 2 rounds, but started to definitely tire and slow down in the 3rd.
Yeah, he did. And, to be fair, he had an infection, you know, so that's why the fight, it was originally going to be in Boston, which would have been Calvin's backyard. And then it got pushed to Russia into Zabit's backyard. So, you know, for Calvin, you know, it was a big move. But so Zabit was sick before. And so he even admitted, yeah, you know, that I guess that took more out of me than I appreciated. You know, I didn't realize it was going to wear me out as much as that. So I don't think it's fair to judge this performance like all the rest of them, you know what I mean? Because Zabit is usually very dynamic, and like you said, was initially. The thing that's so neat about watching him, though, like, he's just so floaty. He just does whatever he wants. And, you know, and I was working with Rashad, who has trained with him before. And I said, hey, look, you know, the story that I always hear with people that train with Zabit is like, we, even in these fights, we don't even get to see all of the stuff that he really can do. And they're like, he's like, no, 100%. Like, we're not even like scratching the surface. This guy's unbelievably free and liberated in the gym, and like the moves he throws and all that. So it's cool to see him do some of that. But apparently the story is we haven't even really seen the best of him yet.
Haven't even scratched the surface yet. I pick up on the same thing by watching him fight, because when you're in there with the 4-ounce gloves, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but with the 4-ounce gloves and the MMA distance, it's so hard to do a lot of stuff, to get creative or to take that risk, because it's such a gamble. If I'm going to lunge in, if I'm going to have my guard down. But when you're in sparring, alluding to like what Rashad Evans was saying, you've got the bigger gloves on, and we're going 60, 70, 80%, and we're trying to work the percentages, so we're taking more risk. You're going to see a tremendous amount of stuff. But still, in the fight with the small gloves at the MMA distance, the amount of stuff that we're still seeing from Zabit in these fights is amazing. It's astonishing. So as soon as I see that kind of stuff, I think right away, he must throw everything in training. He must do all kinds of crazy stuff, and he's putting in the reps and being very creative and just having fun with it, because you're seeing that come across in his fights. Like, he was going with the body shots. He was working the head movement. I do these head movement drills with my students, where one person stays in a pocket, the other person throws punches for a minute straight. And you just have to move your head the entire time. And what you're doing is you're just trying to get good at maybe 2 or 3 seconds of that, because 1 minute is not realistic in a fight. And eventually you're going to get hit. But what you're seeing with Zabit is that he's done that enough where he could stay in the pocket for more than 1 or 2 seconds. We saw it in the fight where he was working, he was rolling, and he was covering, and he was just getting good angles and trusting in his head movement, countering to the body, throwing the spinning back heel kicks, throwing the cartwheel kicks. He's got a number of tricks in his bag, and I agree. That was one thing that I wanted to bring up. I feel like until we've seen him in the even bigger fights, we haven't really scratched the surface, because I feel he's the guy that shines brightest in the bright lights. And when we see him in one of these, another main event against another rising star or a bigger star or for a title fight, I feel like he's really going to let everything out, and we're going to see some amazing stuff out of him.
Yeah, and he's tall for the weight class. You know, he's got obviously all that range. Calvin was doing some things correct, though, and starting to show a little bit of a blueprint of how you can beat him, though, in terms of just keep pressuring him. You know, that was the thing. It seemed like, obviously, when a guy is that complex and can throw all 8 points, right, it's hard to get that read. But it seemed like Calvin was starting to figure that out. And apparently, you know, I guess the secret is to just kind of keep pressuring Zabit and don't give him that room, you know what I mean, to get all creative and playful in there. So, yeah, I do think that had Calvin had a couple more rounds, you know, it would have been interesting to see. Let's say it went to the 5th. It could have ended up being 2 rounds to 2. You know, it could have gotten really interesting in there. And I think Calvin should get some credit here for a great performance there. And he is the kind of guy that, in those next 2 rounds, really, I think could have done a lot more.
As comfortable as Zabit looked in there in the first couple of rounds, where I feel like his stock rose dramatically after this fight. Even in a loss, Calvin's stock should rise as well, because for him to stay in there the entire fight, not get busted up that much, not made to look bad. You know, he wasn't posterized in this fight. He was beat up a little bit in the first couple of rounds, but he was always in the fight. He was always standing toe to toe. He was always keeping Zabit. Well, he was always keeping himself honest. When I say honest, I just mean he was in his face, had his hands up. He was using head movement. Eventually, you're going to get hit, but he never made huge mistakes. He never veered the course. He always stayed on the straight arrow, like he said, and pressured until he was able to get his punches. And eventually, it started catching up to Zabit, and he had that success Calvin did in the later rounds. Both guys, stock rose, in my opinion, in my book, after this fight. But Zabit's a star. I mean, Zabit's a guy that I look at him, and I look at the rest of the division above him, and I don't really see anybody that's I really see him being able to beat everyone ahead of him, is what I'm getting at.
Even Brian Ortega. Even Ortega, because here's the thing, Maxi Baby and Volkanovski are fighting next month, but so is Brian Ortega and the Korean Zombie. And so I asked Zabit, he's like, I think I should get the next title shot. He was ranked number 5 coming into this fight, and now Calvin was ranked number 11, so maybe that doesn't necessarily move Zabit forward because he beat a lower ranked guy. But another victory, undefeated in the UFC now, 7 wins, I believe it is, in the UFC. So we have Ortega, who's had his shot, and you know, the Korean Zombie could be an amazing person to go for a title shot as well. But that was literally my next question to you, if you think Zabit should be next. Yeah,
it's really interesting because we have the trickling down process. We have to see what happens with the title fight first, and then we have to see what happens at the end of the year with Ortega and Korean Zombie. I really would not be mad if Zabit leapfrogged Korean Zombie and Ortega and got the title shot. This Zombie, though, where's the Zombie in this list? Where's he ranked? He's ranked ahead of Zabit at the moment. Do we know?
Well, I would think, because it would be Max. You would have Volkanovski up in there. You would have, I think Brian is still probably number 2. If Volkanovski's number 1, I would think Brian might be number 2, right?
Yeah.
Because Zabit was number 5.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I would need to see who's going to win these fights. If Brian Ortega won, Brian's my boy. I would rather see Zabit go against Max than Brian have a rematch. If Korean Zombie beats Brian Ortega, I don't know, man. I love watching some Korean Zombie fight, but after seeing Zabit, I feel like he's going to give anyone in the division a handful.
All right, how about the wild card, Zabit versus Yair Rodriguez?
So I was thinking about the same thing during this fight. I was like, these guys are both very lengthy. They're both high-level strikers. The comfortability on the feet, the creativeness. That would be a very fun fight. I don't know where Yair.
I think Yair's the other one up in the top 5. I don't have. Let me put my glasses on. Look.
Okay. Let's look, because I was gonna say I don't know. Sorry, I gotta bring my leg down real quick, folks. I don't know where Yair is ranked at the moment. I feel like Yair has a very good striking game, and he's long as well, but he doesn't have the ground game that Zabit has.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, those two, I think, were scheduled to fight once before, and it just didn't happen at the time. Number 1 is Max. Obviously, the champ is Max. Number 1 ranked is Volkanovski. Number 2 is Ortega. Number 3, Jose Aldo's still up there, but he's actually dropping down a weight class next month. But Aldo is still there. Yeah. Then Zabit, then Frankie Edgar, then Yair, then Chan Sung Jung, Hanato Moicano, and Jeremy Stevens. So
where was Korean Zombie? He was like 7?
So he is, Zombie's number 7. So we're going to have number 2, Brian Ortega, versus number 7 in Korea.
So it's shaping up to be that if Max Holloway can hold on, or whoever, if he holds on or not, but if Max Holloway holds on and gets past this test, it's shaping up in my mind that Zabit would be the next one in line, because Ortega's already had his crack. And so Ortega wins. I don't know if he gets the immediate rematch. If Korean Zombie wins, he's ranked lower. He's ranked lower than Zabit, but he just takes off.
But if he takes out number 2,
I know. It's tricky. Either one, I don't think you can go wrong. I would like to see, as much as Brian Ortega is my boy and I want the best for him, to me, the most enticing matchup would be either Zabit or the Zombie. Zabit has already proven himself. He carried a main event. He looked flawless. Korean Zombie now has to do the same for them to be in competition for that match. I would like to see their following as well. I hate to get to this part of it because I like to talk real fighting here. But I remember during the show them mentioning that Zabit has a very big following, 2 or 3 million followers on Instagram because of his Russian influence. Yep. You know, and that has a lot to do with it as well. If we know that maybe he's not on Khabib's level yet, But if this is a guy that has 2 million followers and he carries shows and he has a whole country on his back as other fighters before, it makes a lot of sense to, for pay-per-view buys, for business.
Absolutely.
And it just makes it a more enticing fight. But it would be one of those two guys first. Max has to pass his test, but the Korean Zombie has to get through Bryant too.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see Zabit versus Max, but if Volkanovski gets past Max, that stare down would be interesting because Zabit is very tall. Volkanovski is not so tall. That would be a very interesting matchup.
And the only reason I didn't mention Volkanovski against either of those guys, because I feel like if Volkanovski gets past Max, depending on the fight, Max would maybe get his rematch after that.
Depending, exactly.
He's such a beloved champion
For
that
sure.
They wouldn't throw him to the curb. They probably, and Max is not a boring fight type guy.
Right.
So for Volkanovski to get past Max, I feel like it would be a 5-round banger. It would go to the judge's decision, 3 rounds to 2. Volkanovski gets the nod. Max wants that immediate rematch.
Right.
That's the kind of hype that I would see afterwards. So for anyone to fight Max would have to get the win. I don't think Volkanovski's going to fight anyone but Max for the next 2 fights if he gets the win.
Right. Well, I'll be curious, people watching and listening, to get your comments in here. I'd be curious who you guys think should be next for the title shot, if it should be the Ortega Zombie winner or if Zabit's done enough. Definitely curious what everybody's thoughts are on that.
You guys know what this is? You know what that is, Karyn?
No, what is that?
That's a Korean heart. That's a Korean sign. America has this. Korea has that.
Cool.
I learned that from Bryant Ortega at the stare down when he was looking and he went to his pocket and he did this and everybody busted out laughing. I was so lost, Karyn. I was so confused. I was like Googling away. Finally, I figured out that in Korea, this is kind of the thing. Love. So that's what they do. So number love, people.
Breaking hearts all over the world too, that guy. My God. But yeah, what a good dude. Brian is great. So yeah, the co-main event though, as we talked about, there was some shuffling on that card. Alexander Volkov versus Greg Hardy. It was supposed to be Junior Dos Santos. Now, you and Volkov share the same wrestling coach in Kenny Johnson. Mm-hmm. And Kenny wasn't over in Russia, but I was asking him some questions before the fight about their approach, because if folks remember, the last time we saw Volkov, it was over a year ago. The fight with Derek Lewis, he was beating the Black Beast 99% of the time. Last 15 seconds, Black Beast does what he does, knocks Alex out. So they were obviously going to be more cautious going in, because Greg is the same kind of situation of a very strong power puncher, a person who you could be beating and who could just land one on you, and the next thing you know, the fight is over. So they wanted to play a lot with range, make sure they controlled things. He told me they weren't going to kick too much, because in case the option of catching it and taking him down or closing that range. So also said they were going to be careful with knees, not do too much of that. But Volkov did a good job using the distance, but also Greg had a hurt right hand, which did change a lot of the fight.
It's really tough for me to for this fight specifically to determine how Greg looked against Volkov because of the injury. I mean, it happened so early and it affected the fight so drastically, not in terms of an up and down momentum shift, but in terms of the output that Greg Hardy was able to do after that. You can see clearly he was only throwing his left hook. He wasn't throwing that overhand right, and he was having to throw that lead hook and try to counter and put himself in harm's way. Volkov did the correct thing. He just stayed honest with everything, kept popping the jab, keeping his hands up, working his defense, kind of just taking small shots away, never putting himself in danger. We're going back. I go back to the Black Beast fight. He looked like a world beater in that fight. He was outclassing the Black Beast.
Yeah.
He gave the Black Beast the one option he has to land that overhand is to throw knees to the body. You throw a knee to the body, now I'm cutting my distance in half, because the knee is like an elbow. I'm taking my range away. Right. He puts himself in knockout range throwing a knee and got caught with that overhand right. And I remember Kenny Johnson was just crushed. They were like, no more knees. Here comes a knee.
Right.
He gets knocked out. Obviously, like you alluded to, they wanted to correct that. He looked amazing on the feet leading up to that knockout in the Black Beast fight. They wanted to continue where they left off before that knockout in this fight, and he did it. I thought it was a bit of a safe fight for Volkov, to be honest. He fought very safe, but he needed to. It was a last-minute replacement.
Yep.
against a dangerous, untested guy with not much of a name yet. You know, he's a guy that has everything to gain beating Volkov, but Volkov really has nothing to gain by beating Hardy. He's supposed to beat Hardy.
Right.
But I've got to say, I've kind of jumped on board, and I might get some of our fans mad at me, but I've kind of jumped on the bandwagon, Karyn, with the Greg Hardy train.
Okay.
At first, when he came on the scene, me and you both were like, first of all, it's a bit controversial. We know that.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the way that the UFC pushed him into like co-main event slots right away, without having been proven, and against guys that we've never heard of. And I'm like, all right, they're building him, but they're throwing him in co-main events, and it doesn't make sense. His performance before Volkov, he looked like a world beater. He looked very calculated. His defense looked good. His timing, his range. He's got the power.
Yeah.
And so for him to go 3 rounds against Volkov with a possibly broken or injured hand, it tells me that he is that caliber guy. He's got the big power. He's kind of, I know this is an overused word, but the new breed of MMA fighters, that athletic, strong guy that just adapts. He didn't come from a Muay Thai background. He hadn't been doing jiu-jitsu his whole life, but he picked up the MMA game very, very fast and very well. And he's a force to be reckoned with. I truly believe so in the heavyweight division. Don't forget about the size advantage that he has on everyone. He cuts 20 pounds to make 265. He's a huge man going in there come fight time.
Yeah, I spoke to him after the fight. I ran into him as I was leaving the hotel. It was actually the next morning. And so he had his hand, wrapped up and everything. Oh. And so I asked him, I said, hey, is it broken? You know, what's the deal? And he said, well, he's like, he always says, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, all this stuff. And, he said, well, I'm not sure, ma'am.
You don't necessarily love that.
I don't love, ma'am. I appreciate the respect and I appreciate the politeness,
right.
But you're like, I'm not, whatever, but
come on, we're the same age here.
yeah, exactly. So, but he said he was going to wait until getting home to the States to get it x-rayed. So at the time of us recording this, we're not sure of the outcome of that. But he said he was going to wait till he got home. And he said, well, but I have braces and I have all these things for it because, it was kind of injured coming into the fight. And I was like, oh, that sucks. How come? And he's like, well, remember I just fought 22 days ago. I'm like, oh yeah, duh. Like, so because he did have the 5th fastest turnaround in UFC modern history of 22 days. The last fight in Boston was a whole scenario with the inhaler, which ended up being a no contest, whatever. But he took this fight. And so, he did still have to go through that fight, right? 22 days ago. So coming into this one with Volkov, he said there was already some issues going on with his right hand. So he had been wearing, bandages and braces and things like that anyway, coming into this whole thing. And so it just re-aggravated something that had happened in the fight. So that's what that injury was.
That's great insight because look, at the time of this recording, like you said, we don't know. They hadn't released it yet if it broke or not. But what that tells me, it's probably not broken. It was probably already injured because if it was something that he was already kind of nursing before.
Right.
Almost every fight, I get soft tissue damage. The hand is a bunch of tiny bones surrounded by little, and you get just like swollen ankles, you get swollen hands, knuckles get swollen, the soft tissue swells up. So he's probably nursing something like that, and he probably popped them one time good, and one of those soft tissue damage areas flared up, and that's why he didn't want to use it anymore. A little surprising though, because you'll see guys fight with a broken hand and still throw that punch sometimes, but he was really able to not throw that right hand for like 2 rounds, and so to not throw it at all with only soft tissue damage is a little surprising, but yeah, it's good to know. If it was something that was already bothering him, then it's unlikely that he broke it in the fight if it was already injured before.
Yeah, he was talking about, like you said, ligaments and things like that were strained or, tense or whatever. But to your point about him improving, he is rapidly improving. And that's one thing that like you're saying, regardless of how we feel about his history, and just so people know that by saying and breaking down his fights and saying positive things about him as a fighter does not mean I agree with his history. So let's just say that. But dealing with the person that I deal with, the person who is in front of me in interviews, and like I said, is always professional and polite with me. But we're speaking about his skills. And so he is rapidly improving. And that is the thing, this is a man who was a pro bowler in the NFL, obviously a gifted athlete. And that's the thing about him is his skill set in MMA is still, he's green, but he does seem to have a rapid improvement. He does get better every fight. You're working with ATT. It's a great team. As long as you're a person who listens to your coaches, that's a team that's going to make you get better, so he is getting better. And it will be interesting as he's starting to put all of these things together, because like you said, physically he's incredibly imposing. He's strong. He has a mindset of, I think, processing this well. He was talking about losing in the NFL and you have to turn around and play the next Sunday, right? So you can't wallow in it. You got to suck it up and move on and move on. And there are a lot of things about his history as an athlete that I think are really going to help him going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this was, again, for his career, a good loss. He did the UFC a favor. He came in to take a short notice fight. He performed well. He went 3 rounds with a top elite guy that he was a heavy underdog. Well, I don't know the betting odds, but in fight calculations of how many fights.
I have the odds right here. Funny you should ask, Alan. Going into this one, Greg Hardy was plus 240. Volkov was minus 290.
There you go. Volkov had like more wins than I've had fights, I believe, or something. Yeah. So he's got a tremendous number of fights. But anyway, what I'm getting at is he did very well. Didn't take that much damage. He got to face some adversity in this fight with the hand and with getting popped in the face and losing. So I think career-wise, this was a good fight for him. Again, I've said this before. He's going to have one of the weirdest records at the end of his career. I don't know why. He's got like no contest.
I know.
And
DQs.
Draws. He's going to have a record that's going to be like 7-3-1-1 like at the end of his career. It's like with dashes everywhere.
Yeah, he's now 5. Greg is 5-2 with 1 no contest.
There we go.
One of those is a DQ loss. So to your point, Volkov, that was his 31st victory. He's 31-7 now. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
But yeah, so good fight for Volkov, like you were saying, maybe not moving him forward, but certainly, he got back on track. It was over a year layoff for him, so he's back in action. So I was just over in Russia, and now tomorrow, this time tomorrow, I'll be on a plane, making my way down to Brazil, Sao Paulo. It's been a number of years since I've been in Brazil, so I'm excited to go back. Of course, we have Jacare, who is in our main event, and he is moving up to 205 pounds to face Jan Blachowicz. And okay, Alan, say the name. Repeat after me. Jan Blachowicz.
Jan Blachowicz.
Jan Blachowicz.
Wasn't that a movie with Julia Roberts?
Aaron Brockovich. Aaron Brockovich versus Jacare Souza.
Jan, guys. Karyn was teaching me before we went live. It's Jan. It's not Jan like I was saying. It's Jan. Jan Brockovich.
Jan Blachowicz. The BL.
Brockovich.
Yeah, the BL sound is like a W instead. It's Blachowicz.
Jan Blachowicz. Close enough. I tell you one thing about Jan. He's a hard hitter.
Yeah, he is.
And he hits hard in a big division at 205. And obviously, we've seen this before. 185ers want to test their power and test their skill set at a bigger division. And it hasn't gone well for the majority of the 185ers that have been moving up in recent times. Jacare is an exception to the rule when it comes to toughness. I believe that he kind of can wear damage and stuff better than some of the other guys. And I don't have to play like mystery right here. We're talking about Weidman. We're talking about Luke Rockhold. These guys, great fighters at certain points in their career. They've had their share of losses. I don't think their chins have quite held up at this stage in their career. Love both guys. Not talking negatively about them, but realistically, I think Jacare is still got his chin more so than the other two guys, so he's got a better puncher's chance in this fight. But I do feel like even though Jacare was a big 85er, there's going to be a substantial size difference here again with Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because Jacare moving up, he has had some mixed results lately, right? Because he'll win one, then he'll lose one. He'll win, beat this guy, lose to that one. And part of that was injury. He had I believe it was a pectoral thing or a bicep thing that was messed up in the fight with Whitaker. But then, he'll get a victory. So it's been hard on him to make that weight cut. He is older now. The weight cut was a big part of it. So it'll be interesting to see him feeling good, fleshed out, not depleted, also fighting in Brazil in front of his home country, could renew, his energy and all of that. Jan is certainly going to be going into enemy territory. I'm excited to see what happens with Jacare. We don't know how many more fights we'll get from this guy. I like the idea of him testing out this other weight class, moving in there where he will be able to maybe just physically feel a little better as he goes into it. But certainly, I agree with you that he doesn't want to stand there and test his chin against Blachowicz. I want to take him down.
Jacare is far past being just the jiu-jitsu guy, right?
Of course.
He's a well-rounded MMA athlete, and he can definitely strike. But part of Jacare's success on the feet comes from being the aggressor, coming the guy that throws the harder shot, that's willing to commit when we're in that danger zone in the firefight. Jacare will commit. He'll double down, bite down on his mouthpiece, and say, "I'm going to go with 2 or 3 hard shots because I like the chances of my chin. I like the chances with my power."
Right.
That style is not going to work out against Jan. Jan's a bigger, harder-hitting guy, so he may need to make a couple of adjustments in this fight. Use the punches to get into the takedowns. Maybe put Blachowicz on the cage a little bit, try to tire him down to get inside a little bit better. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some different strategies out of Jacare in this fight in order to get the W.
Yeah, I think so as well. Also, the co-main event. I love this because these are two Brazilian legends on this card in the main and co-main. Jacare in the main event, Shogun in the co-main event. Big Shogun fan, just always, just come on, from back in the day. I mean, this guy is legendary, right? So he was supposed to be fighting our buddy Smiling Sam.
Yeah.
Smiling Sam got hurt. They are now going to be fighting, he's now going to be fighting Paul Craig from Scotland, and Paul just was victorious when we were down in Mexico City in September. And to be honest with you, Paul, that was the last fight on his contract when we were in Mexico. Oh. And we were talking after the fight, really nice guy, his team, they're all lovely, real good dudes. Yeah. And he was saying, he really wasn't sure what the future would hold. He wasn't sure if he was going to keep fighting. He didn't know if he'd even get the offer to keep fighting. He didn't know if he wanted to keep fighting. He was at a point getting a little older and was really going to kind of think about some things. And now we know that he's fighting Shogun. So I'm curious. I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to get the story from him, whether he re-upped just for this fight, if he signed on for more. But it is interesting because we talk about this when you're even considering stopping. What does that do to your mindset? Yeah. But then again, if you were considering stopping, but all of a sudden you have the opportunity to fight a Hall of Famer, of course you're going to probably take it. If you lost to Shogun, so what? You lost to Shogun. If you beat Shogun, holy crap, you beat Shogun. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it seems like a fight that you'd be smart to take. But Paul, has late submission victories on it. He's got I think the latest one in the division's history at like 4 minutes and 59 seconds of round 3. So Paul is, it'll be an interesting fight. I'm not sure when you look at Shogun's. I was talking to Eduardo, his manager, when we were in Singapore with Damien. And like, you know that I'm a big Shogun fan. I said, Eduardo, I'm a little nervous though, because when you look at Shogun's social media, you don't see a lot of pictures of Shogun training. You just see pictures of like Shogun out to dinner with his friends, Shogun with his cute little daughter, Shogun, and I'm like, is he training? Because he's gonna fight, right?
I'm interested. I hope he's training for that one. The whole thing is pretty interesting. I like what you brought up about Paul Craig.
Yeah.
saying that he was considering, maybe stepping back. He's getting up there in age. Not sure if he's going to renew his contract. Obviously, if you're in that train of thought and then the call comes, hey, do you want a co-main event against a legend like Shogun? You take it. You take it because not only just when opportunity knocks, you answer. He's probably that type of guy. Right. But Shogun is a very a great opportunity to fight him because he's a legend, and with no disrespect, he's not nearly the dangerous fighter that he was years back. He's very beatable today. He's very dangerous today. Sure. But he's kind of like an injured animal in a way where he's got some holes now. And we see that where he can be taken out, but then when you get a little too excited, he ends up taking you out. He's still got that offense, that great offense. I just don't think he takes punches quite as well anymore. Doesn't move quite as fast anymore. Right. So yes, I think he took that. One thing that you mentioned though about him thinking about maybe retiring and then taking this, where's his mindset? I honestly, after being in this position myself these last couple of years, I don't think it plays that much of a part, to be honest. Okay. Before a couple of years ago, if you would have asked me this, I would have said yes. Like a lot of people say, once you've kind of got one foot out the door, you might as well already be out the door because, it's kind of it was a negative thing, right? That we kind of talked about it. Yeah. But, with the injuries that I've had over the years, with a neck injury and now the ACL and so many different things, and I've considered it for sure. I go, man, like I just don't want to be injured anymore. I've always had my passion for fighting, but I didn't want to be injured. And so I've thought about it. Should I make this decision or not? And then when I get healthy, the fire comes back. And it's like all that is forgotten. So I've learned through my experiences that it doesn't really affect your psyche or your passion, because when you're in, you're all in. When you're out, you're still trying to figure it out if you're in or you're out. But when you say, look, you're signing on a dotted line, you're fighting Shogun, boom, back to training twice a day, back to training 9 times a week, and you got a goal set again. You know what I mean? So not everybody's the same way, but I feel like for him, that's probably what happened. He was maybe considering it. Do I want to do this? I don't know if the UFC is going to renew my contract. Now I have a great opportunity to put a huge name on my resume and fight in Brazil. Let's do this and let's go full force. So it's smart of him to take this fight. If I'm breaking it down as an odds maker, Paul Craig, I like him. I saw you do like an interview with him or something.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Charismatic dude. I kind of really like him. But he's kind of more of a slow-moving jiu-jitsu guy if I'm breaking him down a certain way. I might not be right on the head with it. But and I feel like he's vulnerable to getting caught with sorry for that. He's vulnerable to getting caught with one of Shogun's shots. So he has to be very careful in this fight because Shogun is a guy that can put his lights out.
Yeah, Shogun could definitely put his lights out. And if it does go to the canvas, Shogun is good there too, though. It's not like we can forget that this guy can't heel hook somebody, so he has submissions as well. But I think, yes, still and all, the most dangerous situation is if your back is against the cage and you have Shogun teeing off on you. It's not a good day at the office.
And on the other side of that, like you said, you don't want to get knocked out by Shogun. But I think Paul Craig's biggest advantage will be on the ground. If he can get Shogun down, even though Shogun is a long-time black belt. Yeah. Chael's son and guillotine Shogun back in the day.
I was there.
And Paul Craig, even if he doesn't submit Shogun, he just wants to put Shogun on his back.
Yeah.
He's the longer, bigger fighter. Just rain down damage, win the rounds. He can get a victory that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that is definitely the best path to victory for Paul. So I'm headed down there tomorrow. It'll be fun. It'll be my first time in Sao Paulo. So looking forward to just mainlining coxinhas and feijoada. I just love Brazilian food so much. And the people obviously are great. And I've been, I've had Globo on a lot, I'm trying to, because I'm still practicing my Portuguese every single day, but I'm just like really dialing my ear in to, really discerning all the words again. And I will say, like, traveling all over the world, I've gotten, it's like you really can fine tune your ears to different accents and stuff, which has been fun. But actually, Alan, I wanted to backtrack for a second because we forgot to talk about Dan Hot Chocolate and that beautiful knockout in Russia right when he needed it. His back against the wall, 2-fight skid, that he was losing, two fights in a row. And that fight was kind of going okay for him, but not great. But that perfect knockout. And that, I know, Dan's a guy in your division that you've definitely been aware of for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, no, me and Dan almost fought once or twice, I believe, already. But that was a big victory for him. He needed that.
Yeah.
He seemed to kind of play it cool, like, yeah, this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. I don't mean that in a negative way, but he kind of played like, this was part of the plan.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was part of the plan. He was losing the fight in my eyes.
Okay.
And like he seemed to be like shooting the takedown. I don't want to go as far as saying desperation.
Right.
But he wasn't really winning on the feet. And a lot of what he was doing wasn't working. So he would shoot the takedown, but not getting the takedowns. Kind of starting to get touched up on the feet.
Yeah.
And as you said, coming off of a couple losses, a very bad knockout prior to that,
Yep.
He needed a victory. And he did exactly what he needed to do. He came out, stuck to his guns, got that big counter hook, and man, flatlined his old boy. I mean, he really knocked him out good. Big victory for Hot Chocolate, man. It's a weird thing because he's a guy that I have nothing personally against, but we could probably likely meet one day. We almost fought one time. I had to pull out. I was injured, but he's also represented by my agency.
Just gonna say that.
So it's like I tread lightly when I talk about him because I'm not a negative person in general, but he's a possible competitor of mine.
Right.
But he's also represented by my friends, so I have to give credit where credit's due. And it was a great comeback for him and a well-deserved victory.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because I didn't know if a lot of people knew that, and so I knew you guys were rep by the same person, but I didn't know how well you knew each other. But it was funny because he came to the post show, and he and Rashad know each other well because they trained together with Henry Hooft and everything and stuff, so they know each other well. But I've met him a few times. Dan is just such a nice guy. And so we were talking though, and he had some stitches and stuff, and so I said something like, "Oh well, your modeling career is still safe though because the stitches on the side." And he kind of made a little face, and I was like, "Well, I hope it's okay to put it out there because I don't know if a lot of people know that he models. I mean, I think if you follow him on social media and stuff." But he kind of chuckled and stuff like that. And I don't know if he was just trying to be like tough guy fighter in that moment. And I took him out of it by saying, you're a pretty boy or whatever. But, no, he's really nice. And eventually he said he wants to maybe get into commentary and stuff like that too. But I did think about it. I couldn't remember if, you guys had been actually scheduled to fight each other at one point. But I did know that there was that relationship with the agency. And so in my mind, I was kind of amusing myself.
Yeah, we were supposed to fight in Germany, and that's when I had the neck surgery.
Right.
So we couldn't do it. But that's probably what it was. When you said the modeling thing, he was probably like, relishing in the victory, the glory of the battle. And then you said the modeling thing. He's like, hey, like, is that a shot? Are you trying to diss me or not? So he probably had his guard up. Yeah,
no, he's real nice guy. So happy to see him back on the winning track. I meant to talk about that fight before too. Got a little ahead of myself with Russia and everything. But that about does it. We are definitely busy after I get home from from Brazil. I will have a few weeks off until going to DC, for that fight with Alistair and Jairzinho. Prayers up for Anaya. Some of the news that's coming out, if I'm being honest, is not really great. They have caught the guy that they believe kidnapped her, and when you hear some things in the news about some of the evidence they have found, it
really
doesn't bode well, but I'm keeping faith alive and hope alive, and really praying for Anaya's return.
Yeah, that's I don't know if you want to talk about it on the show or anything, but I saw that they caught the guy, and he was the person of interest, has been captured. I didn't hear any updates after that, so I'm sad to hear that it's not the kind of updates that you want to hear.
Yeah. It's tough. Walt's such a lovely guy. I think if there's one positive thing that is coming out of this, I guess if they have that Find Anaya hashtag, that some other people have been able to kind of get their stories out too about other missing children, because this one is trending, and so the search for her is maybe helping some other people get found too, which... Mm-hmm. If you had to find a positive out of a negative. So yeah, prayers for those guys. And prayers for you too, Alan. I know you're sitting here and you're acting fine and everything, but I know you probably actually are in a little bit of pain with that knee. So wrap it up.
Sleeping is rough. I toss and turn every night. So to sleep with my leg elevated all night, it's not for me. And I'm the type of guy that I try to get off of the pain pills immediately. I want to just tough it out, but ACL is no joke, man.
No joke. Well, folks, if you want to follow the escapades, my traveling. You can find me at KB Heat on Instagram, Karyn Bryant across the board everywhere else, and also, of course, MMA Heat as well. And Alan, where can they find you?
Yep, and you can follow me as well, guys, at Alan Jouban across the board on all social media platforms.
Awesome. And folks, if you prefer this as an audio download, you can find this and all of our episodes at mma.audio. So thanks for checking it out. See you next time.
Take care, guys.